Um, yeah, my name's Abby and I'm an addict. And I'm really nervous, um, really nervous, but thankfully I can't actually see any of you on my tiny little phone. Am I in big at the moment? Am I like on a big screen? Ah, fantastic. Okay, cool. This makes me feel a bit better about life. Um, yeah, so, okay, so my name's Abby and I'm an addict, and I'm really grateful to be um, sober this morning. Um, Clean and sober, and with you guys at 7 in the morning. It's 11 over there, so you're a bit more lively than I am. But I am feeling good this morning, um, and it wasn't always the case. Um, Ever since I was young, I've had this uncomfortable feeling within me, and it wasn't. I grew up here in Crawley, and I had a loving family. We had our dysfunction. Every family does, but I don't believe it's what makes me an addict. What makes me an addict is that once I put any chemical inside me, I can't stop. I have little or no control over the amount I take, and I do stupid shit, and I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm completely baffled. Before I came to Cocaine Anonymous, I had no idea why I was doing what I was doing. I was completely baffled. Um, um, but the malady I've had ever since I was a young girl, I remember whenever I went into a social situation, I used to go, school or drama club or anything like that. I was always separate in my mind, not in reality. I spoke to my mum the other day, and I thought I was a really shy person, a really shy child, and she said to me, "Abby, you were bossy as hell. You were demanding, and you used to go into situations and just demand that everybody do what you wanted to do." And that really shocked me. I could still be like that. That really shocked me because I thought I was really shy because my internal state was fear. Ever since I was a child, I was scared of you. I was scared of what you thought of me. Um, I always felt different and weird and the odd one out. And I used to go into situations and feel like that every situation I went into. And I remember feeling that way for as long as I can remember. And I found it hard. I found it difficult to make friends. And again, my mum said, you had loads of friends, but on the inside, I felt like I had none because I was separate from you, and that was from a young age. And that separation is something that I still struggle with today. Resentment and fear. It just separates me from my higher power and from you guys. Like when Eric said to call Carl, I was like, shit. Arizona has really good recovery. I'm gonna have nothing to share. They're not gonna want to hear what I have to say, and that's my illness talking. That's my, it wants me separate from other human beings, and it gets me there. It gets me isolated, and then it gets me using. So I felt separate and weird since I was a kid, and um, I started using things on the outside to fix this internal uncomfortability from a young age. Um, I used all sorts. I used to use sleep a lot. I used to sleep like 14 hours a day when I was an early teenager because I just couldn't. I didn't want to be conscious. All the fears that I had, I just didn't want to have them. So I used to go to bed and shut it all out. I couldn't stand being in my own skin. I couldn't even get on the bus because I had to look the bus driver in the eye and talk to him, and I was so afraid of. I was paralyzed with fear, and this was at like 9, 10 years old. I was just paralyzed by it. It completely ruled my life. Fear. So I started using sleep. I used food to change the way I felt. It chemically altered my brain. Shopping, relationships. I think I got into my first relationship when I was like 10, and relationship. I think yeah, we spent Valentine's Day at KFC once with a candle, and I thought that was really romantic, and we were going to get married. So, um, I've always I've always had like obsessions, and that's from a young age. And I've always thought that something outside of myself was going to fix me, and I've always been searching. I've always been seeking for that one thing that's going to do it, and I've never found it on the outside. And I still get into the trap of trying to look for it on the outside, because it's the easiest, softer way. A lot of the time it's instant. You know, chemically I can change really quickly, and when I'm in discomfort, and it's not always discomfort like pain. I can't deal with happy emotions either. Just anything. I want to be out of me. I don't want to feel what I feel. I always try and manipulate it the other way. So if I feel good, I feel that I don't deserve it and I sabotage it. And if I feel bad, I feel that I don't deserve it and I try and feel better. So it's not even just feeling bad and wanting to feel better. It's just being a human being. I can't stand being in my own skin and feeling the things that I feel. And so I started using things that would change that from an early age. That wasn't drinking drugs, but I found alcohol when I was 15. And from the first time I took alcohol, it just gave me the freedom that I was looking for, and it was freedom from the bondage of self. All that shit just fell from my shoulders. All the things I thought that were my responsibility, all the things that I'd taken on that weren't mine to take on, all my fears, all my anxieties about not being able to talk to you just fell away. I had a beer and I felt like I'd arrived, and I felt like I could do this. I could do this thing called life that I must have missed something. I missed the boat when, you know, because everybody else seemed to know how to live and I just didn't know how to live. But once I took that beer, I just knew something inside me went, yeah, this is what I'm gonna, this is working for me. But even from that first time when I was 15, I went, it kicked off the craving, which he talks about in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went, I don't know how many drinks I took, but I couldn't stop. Once I had another, and I was just chasing it. And for my whole using career, I was chasing that first beer, and I never got it back. It was always in that next line, in that next bottle was going to be the feeling I got when I took my first ever beer, and I never got it back until I got to Cocaine Anonymous. I didn't get that feeling back again, and since I've come here and got involved with the fellowship and got involved with the steps, I've had that feeling times infinity. It's like nothing I've ever felt before on any drug. But I'll get to that a bit later. So yeah, I was 15 and I was drinking, and every single time I got drunk, I'd get drunk to blackout or close to, and I started doing things. I thought I had a moral compass, and I thought I had, even though I didn't really like myself very much, I still had values that I wanted to live by, and those values just completely disappeared with drinking drugs from the age of 15, and I started crossing lines that I said I'd never cross, and I was really afraid of Class A drugs, and as soon as I started drinking, if you had something, I'd just be taking it, and I wouldn't be asking you what it was, and I'd be doing dangerous things to get it, and it was never enough. And I remember waking up, you know, the next morning after doing all this stupid shit, dangerous stuff, and I was completely baffled as to why I was doing it, because it wasn't in line with who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be, and I was baffled. Every time I'd wake up and be like, well, I didn't want to be doing that, and yet I had absolutely no control over what I'd be doing. Once I put one in me, I'd be off. I'd be taking it all, and then I'd basically become a monster. It talks about Jekyll and Hyde in the Big Book of AA, and that's what I was. You know, I was okay if I didn't have something in me, but I didn't feel okay if I didn't have something in me, so I had to have something. And then once I did, I was just awful. Yeah, like I said, I had a loving family, especially my mum. She's amazing, and in my using, I used to come home in blackout, and I just used to shout at her and call her all the names under the sun and tell her I hated her and tell her she shouldn't have brought me into this world. And you know, she's only been able to start telling me a few years in what it was actually like for her to have a daughter who was saying things like that. So I was affecting everybody around me. The people I loved most, people I didn't want to be hurting, those were the people that I was hurting the most. But I couldn't stop, even though I didn't want to be doing that. I couldn't stop. I'm powerless over this stuff. So wanting to be moral and have these convictions of how I wanted to live doesn't even touch the surface with this illness, because I could have, you know, waking up from a night like that, knowing what I'd said and what I'd done, and saying sorry and really meaning it, and looking my mum in the eyes and saying, I'll be better next time. I won't do this anymore. And then that same night doing exactly the same things and worse. It always got worse, and I was baffled. And by the time I was 19 years old, I was getting arrested, and I was in hospital a couple of times. I remember I overdosed and I woke up, and I was rushed to hospital, and I remember throwing up, and I actually thought in that moment that I was going to die, and I was absolutely terrified, and I didn't actually want to die, and I kept waking up going, I want to die, I don't want to live this way anymore. But that's what it was. It wasn't that I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live the life I was living, but I had absolutely no other option. I hadn't found the 12-step recovery yet. I hadn't found the stuff, the gifts that we get given here. I didn't have it. So the desire was there to not be doing that stuff, but there was no solution yet. So I woke up in hospital, and I was terrified for my life, and I was 19 years old, underweight, scars all over my arms, cigarette burns all over my arms, guilt, shame, remorse just sitting in my stomach. I couldn't stand myself. And I was in that hospital with, I was the youngest one there. They were all elderly ladies at the end of their lives. And the nurses came up to me, and a lot of them said, "Sweetheart, you're 19 years old, what are you doing here?" And I couldn't honestly answer them, because I had no idea how I'd got to that point in such a short space of time as well. In 4 years, it started off as a party, kind of. There were consequences from the beginning when I was 15, but within 4 years, it was just hell. Every time I used it was hell, and I couldn't answer them. But I knew when I was in hospital, I knew I had something. My spirit woke up, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to fight this, because I really did want to live, and it was only getting so close to death that I realised how much I really loved life. I just didn't know how to live it. And the only other woman who wasn't at the end, like an elderly woman, she was 40 years old, and she was in the bed opposite me, and she was an alcoholic. And I knew nothing about alcoholism yet, but this was my first experience of seeing what this illness does. And she was yellow with jaundice. She was 40. She looked about 60. And she said to me, "Sweetheart, don't go down the road I went down, because I'm going to die in this hospital, and I've been dying for a while." And that was a message of my future if I carried on. And I did take that on, and I thought, wow. But I was only 19 years old, and I was still partying, and it was just still one party. In my mind, it wasn't a party anymore. The party was over. But I thought, I'm 19 years old. I'm not going to get that way. I'm not going to be like her. And having no idea that I was exactly the same as her. I suffered exactly the same disease as she suffered. I didn't know that yet. So I got out of hospital, and I had this new lease for life. I had this lust. I was like, yes, I'm gonna change things. And I did change things. I changed a lot of things on the outside of my life, and I started getting, ticking all the boxes of what I thought was gonna help. And it's natural to think that it would help. I got a new job, because I thought, if I can be employable, which I wasn't employable before. I started a college course. I got a new boyfriend, and all these things started to line up on the outside. And in the beginning, they felt okay. These things do work temporarily, but I still had the obsession to use, and I still had the physical allergy, which meant I couldn't stop once I started. So I got all these things on the outside, and it was all looking great. It was all looking great on the outside, but on the inside, I was still dying inside. I still had all the same feelings I had when I was in hospital. The guilt, the shame of what I was doing. I'd go out and use again, do more stupid shit. So the life I built on the outside, I pulled it down very quickly again. And then I didn't have a job, and I didn't have a boyfriend, and I quit college, and I was just back to using, and I was back to that hell that I was in before. And I didn't know how I got there again. I was completely baffled, because I had such a a lust for life when I got out of hospital, that I was completely baffled that I could just, within a few months, it was back to the shit that it was before. And I didn't know what to do. I had no hope. It was just completely dark. I'd wake up every day. It was the same shit every day. Um, I was really uncomfortable in my soul. I couldn't not use because I was so full of resentment, self-pity, and fear that there was no other option for me but to use, because I couldn't be with myself. I couldn't be in my own skin. I hadn't found Cocaine Anonymous yet. That was all there was for me. And if I hadn't have found the 12-step recovery, that, it's that, and then I will die, because this is a killer illness. And there's been someone in the fellowship over here recently who has been in and out of meetings for 10 years. And, he went out and he thought he'd be all right, and he overdosed, and he's died now, and he's left 2 children. So this stuff is pretty fucking serious. I mean, we have a good time in Cocaine Anonymous. I've had amazing times, but you know, this is an illness that will kill. So, and I'm really grateful just for today to be here alive. So yeah, I was hopeless and using and in a really bad place, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't even, because I was 20 years old. I mean, the illness will tell me all sorts to not get me help and keep me isolated. So my excuse was, I'm really young, I'm too young to stop drinking or to do anything different. My life will be over if I stop drinking and using. So I wasn't prepared to do that yet. um, but my neighbour was in another fellowship, and she lived above me in a flat above me, and she saw that I was struggling, and she posted some pamphlets through my door, some some literature through my door, and I just put it in a drawer, and it gathered some dust. But that was that was one addict reaching out to another, and somewhere in my in my spirit that touched me, that someone would, because I didn't know her, she wasn't a friend, she was just a neighbour. But then we got talking, and I'd go up there, and she was clean, and I'd go up there with wine, and don't you want a wine? And so, not getting that she was clean, but she slowly started to build confidence and trust in me, and it's because she was exactly like me. It's not because she was a professional and from this like point of authority, because I had therapy, and therapy is great, but it doesn't keep me sober. So so this one addict helping another, and it was my first introduction into meetings, and there wasn't a particularly bad time when I went to my first meeting. It was just the same shit every day, and one day I woke up and I was just so fucking tired. Like deep in my bones, in my soul, I was so tired and I couldn't do it anymore. So she went with me and she held my hand, and I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I was so disgusted with myself. I didn't even think I deserved a cup of tea. They asked me if I wanted a cup of tea, or coffee, as you probably have over there. Um, so I didn't even have a cup of tea at the first meeting, because I didn't think I deserved the water in the kettle. That's how low my esteem was at that time. But the light that I was shown there, like the unconditional love, because I thought, they don't know what I've done. They don't know what a piece of shit I am, and I couldn't look them in the eye when I was in the meeting. But they were kind to me, and they told me to come to the next meeting. So, and I was, in that lonely place. I had no love for myself, and being shown that, it's such a simple thing to offer someone a cup of tea or coffee, but I think it's one of the best service positions, because when you're in such a dark place and someone does that for you and reaches out to you like that, it's probably one of the most powerful things we've got, is to do that when you're in that place. So I kept coming back to meetings, and I was hearing things to do, and I was like, yeah, but it doesn't apply to me. It's not, I'm 20 years old. All these people have lost their homes, have lost their children, because I was looking for the differences, because I wasn't willing to accept my powerlessness yet. I was willing to accept the kindness of the fellowship, though. So even though going to loads of meetings won't keep me sober, it's what got me in, and the kindness I was shown and the love I was shown in the fellowship is what got me coming back and the solution started trickling in because I kept going back to meetings. But I had a loneliness such as few know, and I expect you all know it because you're all sitting in this meeting. But every time I went to a meeting, I didn't feel alone anymore. Um, and I'd felt alone my whole life. I'd felt separate my whole life. But when I was listening to these people and talking with these people, we were the same. And it gave me hope for the first time in my life that things might actually be okay. So I did that for a while, but every time I went home from a meeting, the loneliness came back because nothing had changed on the inside. So I'd found these new friends, and I was, going for coffee and laughing. I was laughing for the first time in years, um, and it was good. But as soon as I got home, nothing had changed on the inside. So I kept using, because I suffer from, an internal malady and a mental obsession, and I didn't know any of this stuff, but because I kept going back to meetings and I kept going back to meetings and I kept fucking up, I fucked up a lot. I'm not saying that you have, like, relapse has to be part of your story, but it was for me. But I stayed close to the fellowship, and I kept in contact with them the whole time I was still fucking up. So, don't let it keep you out there. Keep in contact with people. Um, yeah, so I came to loads of meetings, and then I went over to Berlin for New Year, and my friend missed his flight. Anyway, I ended up alone there, and I remember thinking, because people said about the physical allergy, and once you put one, I was like, yeah, that's not me, because every time I go out, I want to get fucked up. I mean, what is the point in taking a couple? I just didn't see. I always wanted oblivion, so I didn't understand the concept of just having one. Just didn't enter my mind that that's what some people would want to do. But I tried it. I went to the bar and tried some controlled drinking, and I couldn't do it. And because I'd been going to meetings and I'd been hearing that, I actually had the experience of it myself, and it made sense to me once I had that experience. And I woke up in Berlin, and I didn't know where I was, who I was next to, and I was really scared. And I had another moment of just internal surrender. I can't fucking do this anymore. I need help, and I became humble enough to ask for it. So I got back to England, and I got a sponsor, and I started working through the 12 steps as outlined in the big book. And my journey hasn't been linear. I haven't stayed sober since then, but I got 6 months of sobriety, and I'd done the 12 steps, and I felt amazing, because the 12 steps, as I mentioned earlier, it was like that first beer times infinity. I felt comfortable in my own skin. I could look you in the eye. It happened really quickly as well. I went through the 12 steps within 3 months, and from that nervous wreck that I came into in the beginning, I could look you in the eye, and I felt comfortable in my skin, and things started to get better on the inside, and as a result, things started to get better on the outside, and I didn't have to put any effort into it. I didn't have to control things. It just happened. And that's been my experience ever since, is that when I let go of trying to control the outside and just work on my internal state, then everything just falls into place on the outside. But I stopped working it because things had started to get good, and I didn't have the willingness anymore. I wasn't in the pain that I was in. When I got back from Berlin, I was like, I'll do anything. I got service. I was calling people every day, writing gratitude lists, doing my inventory, just doing everything that's suggested. I was doing it all, and things got better really quickly. And then I let go of it. I let go of it because I didn't have the pain had given me the willingness before, and I didn't realise that this illness will sneak back in all sorts of ways. And 6 months later, I was using again, and beating on the bar, completely baffled. Um, um, But again, the fellowship carried me, and my sponsor messaged me like, "Are you okay?" Because she hadn't heard from me, and I said, "No, I'm using." And she took me back to a meeting, and then since then, by the grace of God, June 23rd, 2014, I haven't had to use a drink or a drug since then, and for that I'm grateful. It is a program of maintenance. That's what I learned from that from that 6 months of sobriety that I had, and then lost. This is a day. I have a daily reprieve contingent on what I do in the day, because I still suffer with the malady. I still get resentful, and I get separated, and then I start getting uncomfortable. Once I start getting separated from you, and I don't want to go to meetings, and you share the same shit every time, shut up. When I start getting into that state, it gets dangerous, and that's why I have to keep in constant contact with my higher power and my fellows. Because if I don't, my mind will start telling me shit, and it will lead me back out there. And like I said about the guy who died in this fellowship over here in Brighton, you know, he went out and he probably thought he was going to be okay, that he just haven't, because he'd done it before. He'd done it for 10 years, been in meetings and then gone out and used. But you playing with your life every time we go out, we're playing with our lives. And the life that I've got today in Cocaine Anonymous is greater than anything I could have ever imagined. Because all I wanted was to be okay in life, and to be able to be employable, and have friendships and relationships, and be okay in my own skin. And I've had that and so much more. I came over to see you guys in Chicago last year, the World Convention, and it blew me away. I met people from Sweden, from Arizona, from all over the world, and that feeling that I'd always had of being separate and alone, it wasn't there when I was in Chicago. And I connect it, because that's all I ever wanted to do, was connect to people. My illness is separation, and recovery is connection. All I ever wanted to do was connect to people, and I didn't know how. And this program has taught me how. And when I do that, I don't feel the need to use. It's not that I have to fight not using. It's not willpower that I need. It's just, when I'm all right, there is absolutely no need to take a drink or a drug, and I'm more than all right most of the time. Yeah, it's this program. You know, the promises do come true. And when I first came in, I thought I was different from everybody else, and it wasn't going to work for me. But I tried anyway. So even if you've got those kind of thoughts, just try it, because it works. Even if you don't believe it's going to work, it worked for me. Even though I had, because I saw it work in others. I saw it work in my neighbour who posted those pamphlets through my door. It worked for her, and then it worked for me. And I recently made an amends, and it was the biggest one on my list. And I was really, you know, I haven't seen the guy in 5 years, and we sat and we spoke for 4 hours, and all that he wanted was to be heard. And I've had that in meetings for the last 4 years. My story's been heard, but you know, we have such a gift here, because I just sat there and I listened to him, and that's all that he'd wanted. You know, he didn't want to hear my sorry for what I'd done. He just wanted to be heard. And I think that's all human beings ever really want, is to be heard. All the stuff that we do, all these things that we try and get, material, it's just a cry out to connect to people. And then he might be one of us. I'm not sure. I can't tell. But I was able to put pamphlets through his door 4 years after someone did that for me. So, you know, this stuff is about giving it away as well. So yeah, I don't know how long I've been sharing for, but if you're new, or even if you're not new, because this illness comes, like I was saying, I was really willing when I was in pain and I was new. I did everything that was suggested because the pain was fresh. But even if you're not new and you've got a few years and you don't really know what's going on and you're in pain and you're like, just ask for help, because there's no hierarchy in Cocaine Anonymous. No one is better than anyone else. We're all just addicts trying to get some peace in our lives. So if you're new, or if you're an old timer and you're struggling, or if you're struggling, please, you're in a meeting with your fellows right now, just grab someone after the meeting and say, please help me. And they will help you, because that's been my experience every time I've done that. And it's the most powerful thing that's ever been given to me. It's to ask for help and receive it. And then once you do that, you can then be in a position to do that for someone else. And that is a gift beyond anything I can describe to you if you haven't had it, to give this away, is because I thought I was a useless and worthless piece of shit. So to sit with another woman and go through the 12 steps and watch her light up in the eyes, it's not even about what she gets on the outside, it's the eyes. yeah, it blows me away, and it's really good to be with you. You're almost in September now as well. There's about 15 minutes left because you're still in August. I'm in September. But yeah, it's really good to be with you guys in a different month, in a different time zone, different country, but the same. We're all the same, and we have the same solution. Come get it. Thanks.